in this video, I'm going to be going through the July 31st patch notes for Dungeonborne. There's some pretty big changes here, especially for the Cryomancer. The Rogue also has a new ability, and there is a new in-game event, so I'm just going to be going through all of this stuff. So first of all, there's some server maintenance and some network stability updates, but that's probably not going to apply to you, because by the time this video is out, that server maintenance will be done, and all that kind of stuff. So, new content, new event, Shadow Constellation. Rogues now have a new E skill, Shadow Veil. Team up with your rogue buddies to experiment with new tactics. Participate in the limited time event to earn exclusive rewards. New items in shop. The skeletal weapons skins are now available. Unleash the terror of flesh and steel upon your enemies. Increase spawn rate for shadow portals. The spawn rate of shadow portals have been significantly increased. Shadow portals can now also appear in Clozo Castle, both casual and classic. Step through the portals for an epic battle against the vengeful monarch. So if you want to fight against that boss, it should be a little bit easier to do so now more than ever. Now, for the Cryomancer, Q's skill Frostbite Curse has brought the Cryomancer back to the top tier, but its current performance is severely polarized across skill levels. Low-end cryos struggle with soul energy management, while high-end cryos enjoy the highest damage floor and ceiling. The changes below aim to balance this disparity. Compared to other classes, a well-built cryo benefits from two unique damage multipliers: reduced cold resistance from Frostbite Curse and the independent damage boost from the will passive Bone Chilling. It's unwise for such a low-cost skill to have these advantages, so we've made the following changes. The will passive Bone Chilling now requires a minimum distance of 15 meters, which used to be 1 meter, to start gaining increased damage, and the maximum damage bonus is achieved at 25 meters instead of the past 15 meters. This significantly reduces the situations where Frostbite Curse can gain the maximum damage boost. So it's just going to make it a lot harder to reach to make that passive worthwhile, really. On Clozo Castle, you might get it sometimes, but on Sinner's End, I really don't think you're going to be fighting people at 25 meters for that long. I think either they're going to back out of the room or they're going to push you, and doing either, I think, is if they back out of the room, yes, maybe they'll be at 25 meters, but you're going to have no way of being able to push them. So that's just going to make it a little bit harder to make that passive worthwhile, but if you can get that 25 meters, then the damage is going to be unchanged. Frostbite Curse no longer reduces cold resistances, reducing the damage of high-end cryos and significantly lowers the burst potential of cryos using melee weapons with orbs. So they don't want Frostbite Curse to be paired with the orbs infused with the sword, or the sword infused with the orbs with the cold damage on it, because I think that was just doing too much damage. The base damage of Frostbite Curse has been increased from 30%/12.6% to 36%/16% to ensure that low-end cryo damage remains roughly unchanged. And then we also have changes to the Cryomancer's soul energy. So, Cryo's maximum soul energy has been reduced from 260 to 100, which is a lot. And then the soul energy cost of Frostbite Curse has been reduced from 40 to 20. The soul energy cost of Ice Storm has been reduced from 60 to 30. And the Ice Armor has been reduced from 25 to 10. The Dexterity passive Permafrost has been changed to restore 1 soul energy when dealing critical damage instead of 2. And the value of soul energy gained from kills remains unchanged to reduce early game dependence on the Dexterity talent in PvE. So, its maximum soul energy has been reduced a lot, but also its cost of skills has gone down a little bit. I think this is going to be just so you can't completely spam abilities a lot. In fact, they even say it here: this combined with the energy cap change lowers the maximum costs from 6.5 to 5, and this means that overly frequent use of Frostbite Curse will result in insufficient total damage, because obviously instead of spamming it, it's going to be better to use one, let that go until it runs out, use one, let that go until it runs out, instead of just spamming it for that extra bit of the first part of the damage, which is what I think people were doing. Other changes: the casting range of Ice Storm has been increased to 12 meters, and the maximum travel distance has been increased to 25 meters to improve the skill's initiation capability and adapt to the will passive changes. Thunderclap Flask, the slow effect has been reduced from 75% to 50%, and the duration has been increased from 4 seconds to 6 seconds to weaken the synergy between Thunderclap Flask and Lightning Staff. I think it's still going to be pretty strong. I think if you have been hit by a Thunderclap Flask and there is someone with a Lightning Staff behind you, I think you're still going to get pretty messed up from that. I don't know if you're going to be able to walk out of lightning, because whichever direction you start walking in, that's where the second lightning staff is just going to go, and I think it's still going to get you super duper low. It does also last longer now, so if you're just trying to run away from like a regular person, that's really not going to work out that well. They're probably just going to be able to like reload a crossbow and hit an easy shot to finish you off, or simply just catch up to you depending on what class they're playing. Potential upcoming change: we plan to adjust the stacking logic of slow effects to multiplicative, and add a minimum movement speed to prevent players from being immobilized by multiple slow effects. Okay, so I guess, yeah, all right. Rogue, new E-skill Shadow Veil. After a 3-second preparation, nearby allies, except Panthers, enter stealth for 15 seconds. We hope this skill brings a wave of new teamfight strategies to Dungeonborne. E-skill Vanish, changed to invisibility, lasts for 30 seconds, and breaking invisibility triggers a 10-second cooldown. So that's definitely going to be pretty powerful in teams, depending on what class you're running. If you have like a Death Knight or a fighter just completely invisible and run up to you and use a whirlwind while you're like looting something, you're going to take a lot of damage from that. And then there's also going to be 2 other teammates that are also invisible that you have to fight against. So that can definitely be pretty strong in teams if you're pairing it well and if you have good comms, and it might actually be good and competitive too, but maybe not. I'm not too sure about that. But we've just got a cool new ability for the rogue either way, and there's definitely going to be a lot of team compositions that are going to pair pretty well with that. Mithril Shadow, E-skill Stealth, changed to invisibility, lasts for 30 seconds, and breaking invisibility triggers a 10-second cooldown. For the Swordmaster, you can now block Whirling Blade. So fixed a critical issue where the E-skill Whirling Blade could only be blocked by shields, resulting in higher than expected effective damage in PvP and making it difficult to counter in close combat. Now the skill can be correctly blocked by all weapons, properly affected by blocked damage reduction, and correctly triggers block-related effects such as Dual Dagger's self-knockback and Longsword's perfect parry. So if there's... yeah, so you can just block the Swordmaster's Whirling Blade now, which I think is going to be very, very, very... it's going to make it much easier to deal with Swordmasters, because before, they were really hard to beat at long range, and they were also really hard to beat at close range, but now if you can perfect parry that Whirling Blade, every second or two you can just hit them with like a really powerful attack, especially if you get a critical strike on it. So they might be a little bit more careful of pushing you now. So that's definitely going to be... it's going to make it a lot easier to fight against Swordmasters up close. And for Swordmasters, if you're using this, you're probably just going to want to use your charge attack more, so that if they're trying to block the Whirlwind, it's not called the Whirling Blade, if they're trying to block the Whirling Blade, then you can just use a charge attack and break their block, and then the Whirling Blade is also going to hit them as well. But you do have to watch out for those perfect parries. And added a visual effect to indicate damage reduction when the stamina passive deflection is active, which I think is a 50% damage reduction when Whirling Blade is active, which is just a quality of life touch-up. Death Knight, reduced the casting time for Q skill Soul Shroud, increased the slow effect of Soul Shroud and Dexterity passive decay from 15% to 25%, fix an issue causing stuttering when using two-handed swords or mace and shield while Q skill is active. For the Druid, the E-skill Shadow Assault in Panther form can now interrupt certain enemy actions, such as bandaging, similar to other attacks. So if someone's healing and you pounce on them as a Panther, that's going to work as intended now. For the Priest, buffing the Priest is our highest priority at the moment. That's good. We believe that further numeric buffs cannot fundamentally solve the core issues and could be very risky. We have been working on this for a while now, including some major changes and new skill options, some of which are already in testing. We hope to share them with you soon. Stay tuned. So I think this is basically them just saying it's going to get a rework, some major changes here, which I think is very fair. Because even in teams, like, yeah, having the heals isn't kind of nice, but also, would you rather have kind of minor heals and be a super squishy character that can't do much in PvE and PvP, or would you rather play someone that can, you know, just also take out the enemy opponents and just have like a regular 3v3? So I think they're okay in teams, but I really don't think they're that good still. I think it's perfectly acceptable to just play a different class that's much more aggressive and just try and take out the enemy team before they take you out. And in solos, they definitely suck. I know for a fact they're really not that good in solos, so I think a rework is definitely required, so it's good that that's happening. That's very, very good, because it's by far just the weakest class in the game right now. Gameplay balance. Increase the number of static escape portals in classic mode Clozo Castle. There can now be 2 fixed escape portals. The cooldown of the Resurrection Shrine has been adjusted to 10 minutes. Okay. I wonder how long it was before. That seems like quite a lot. But alright. Adjusted the Vengeful Monarch's AI. He will now alternate skills between players instead of continuously targeting one player. Okay, so one player can't hold the aggro anymore, which is kind of interesting. Okay, so we're going to go for the equipment balance. Gloves and boots now have defense or attack levels and can be counted towards the participation requirements for classic maps. Optimize the attack range indicator for the lightning staff, which can now be displayed correctly on some complex terrains. Optimize the activation logic of set bonus Tiny Torrent. It no longer affects teammates. Set bonus Force of Trinity can now properly apply the vulnerability effect with tier 3 activated. Set bonus Fairy of the Lake. Re-equipping items no longer refreshes the internal cooldown. And fiction issue where set bonus Pity of Death malfunctioned in the Vengeful Monarch encounter. And then this is just going to be like quality of life stuff, really. And then there are some bug fixes as well. We made 2 small errors in today's patch notes. One, Death Knight's Decay passive still displays a 15% slow in game, but it's actually 25% as mentioned in the patch notes. We'll fix this typo next patch. And Mithril's Shadow Stealth lasts for 30 seconds and does not enter a cooldown after breaking stealth. This is a typo in the patch notes. Okay, so there you go. There's some fixes to the patch notes as well, which are just typos, so everything should still function as normally. But there you go. So yeah, I mean, I think the changes to Cryomancer are probably going to be good. I think it was a little bit too strong. I'm surprised there weren't more changes to Ice Storm, because if you're in solos, it's really hard to do anything against Ice Storm. As a mainly solo player, I much prefer Ice Storm to Frostbite Curse, and I think Ice Storm is still going to be pretty strong. I'm not too sure. I'd have to try it out first, but I think it's still going to be pretty strong. The Rogue ability is going to be... like, rogues aren't that good, is the thing, but it's just going to make them much more annoying to play against, especially if you're in teams. Like, if there's a duo and one's a rogue and one's like a fighter with a whirlwind, that's going to be really annoying to play against, I think. So there's going to be a couple of nice team compositions for the rogue to pair that with, and then obviously you can also block or perfect parry the Whirling Blade from the Swordmaster, which is going to make them feel a lot better to play against, I think, while kind of maintaining their strength. And then a very small buff to the Death Knight there with the Soul Shroud ability, and the Priest is getting a rework. And I'm pretty sure that's about it. So there you go. Lots of changes there. I think Cryomancer is still going to be pretty strong. But I think in the higher up matches where everyone has like full gold stuff, I think they're not just going to delete you. I think it's going to take them a little bit longer to kill you normally. And I think that was the idea of the change, to make them kind of the same in lower levels, but to make them slightly worse at the up high levels, which I think makes sense. So there you go. Thank you so much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. That is going to be it for this video. If you liked it, leave a like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Farewell.